right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Thanks a lot, Jess, and thank you for tuning into the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Susie Cool in a matter of moments over to 93.7 The Fan Cam, and we're going to be talking about the draft. The Steelers, we got breaking news right now. The Steelers just drafted their first pick in the third round, 84th overall, and they took the wide receiver that I wanted, not the wide receiver that I wanted them to take in the second round, but I wanted them to take a wide receiver, A.D. Mitchell, in the second round. But they took Zach Frazier, a position of need in the second round here tonight, 51st overall. And they got another receiver that they really liked, a guy they brought in here to Pittsburgh, a guy they visited, they talked to at the Combine, a guy that they met with at the Senior Bowl, Roman Wilson, a wide receiver from Michigan. He had 48 catches, 789 yards for the national champions, plus 12 touchdowns. 6-foot guy, super fast. Sub 4.4, clocked at 4.39 at the Combine. Very good route runner. He would project as a slot guy. So it seems like they got their slot guy now. I still think that they need receiving help. Maybe they'll try to draft a guy, a project guy, a little bit later. But right now they got the receiver, they got their center, and they got a tackle. So far, Susie, I think it's been a home run for general manager Omar Khan. Second straight year for him drafting for the Steelers.
Richie, that was what I was going to say. The biggest concern going into this draft was the offensive line. And with the Steelers' first two picks in this draft, they took care of some of those problems that they saw in this past season. They really beefed up that line for Russell Wilson, who is coming in at the quarterback position. So I would say that they're helping out the future of the Steelers franchise, not just for this next season, but these might be franchise players that we see here for maybe a decade or so.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if all three of these guys are starters. We saw a lot of the rookies last year starting roles, big roles, even a guy like Nate Herbig getting huge roles here. So I feel like you know, these guys could step right in. Center, of course, would be Zach Frazier, a guy that a lot of people had a first-round grade on. And think about how this draft would have gone if they would have drafted the center in the first round, like a lot of people wanted them to. They went out and got the best player, a guy that they had in the top 10 on their board, Troy Fautanu. Hard to say that name, but I've been practicing. Troy Fautanu. He's a guy that has been dreaming of playing for the Steelers since he was a young kid. So this seems like a match made in heaven for those two.
Yeah, and like I said, this was the biggest need for the Steelers going into this draft. And when you look at these two guys, they're not the sexiest or flashy picks, most flashy picks that the Steelers could have went with that people are like, wow, that is the person that I would have wanted on the Pittsburgh Steelers. However, they're going to be able to make that immediate impact come this next season, and that's what's immediately important for the Steelers going into this, that offensive line need. You have Fautanu, and then you have Frazier. Frazier and Fautanu, they are both gritty, hard-nosed players, and that's exactly what the Steelers need right now.
The one thing that they do have is a luxury with Fautanu. I think he's going to end up starting at some point. They might take the path of Broderick Jones, waiting a little bit before putting him into the starting lineup. But, I mean, Broderick Jones is eventually going to switch over to the other side of the line. He's going to be the left tackle. And this guy seems like he's going to be the right tackle of the future. You still got Dan Moore, too. But I would imagine Zach Frazier is going to get every opportunity to be day one starting center. So that was a great pick in the second round. And you need a receiver. You need receiving help. I thought they might have gone that way in the second round, but they got a guy that they would have picked in the second round if Frazier wasn't there. So far things have been falling their way. Who knows if they drafted Graham Barton in the first round, they pass up on the Fautanu, and then what happens, you know? Then you're forced to go with that wide receiver in the second round, and it's a totally different draft. But right now, these are pieces that can help them next year, help them win. And it's a now mentality for this team. At least that's what I think so, Susie.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing that you just said there, Richie, was the fact that Frazier can just slot in right at center come this season. It's really his job to lose. And all of his experience that he has at West Virginia, I mean, he started 37 games at the center position. He has the experience. He has the snaps there. So unless he just completely fumbles the ball, then he should be slotted into that, like I mentioned earlier, for, a decade. He's going to be that franchise player for the Steelers, whether people want to think that or not.
No pun intended. Hopefully he doesn't fumble the ball or bad snaps like it was Mason Cole last year. All right, we're going to take a break, and we're going to take your phone calls. I know a lot of you guys are glued to the TV right now watching the draft. The Steelers have one more pick coming up in a minute, a couple minutes, obviously. But give us a call tonight, 412. We can talk about it. 575-2600. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports. I'm Rich Walsh, joined by Susie Cool. This is our GMC tweet of the night. 33rd team said this: Zach Frazier only allowed 4 sacks in his 3 years starting for West Virginia. That was over the course of 1,361 pass blocking snaps. Pretty amazing. This guy's tough. He's gritty. That's what they like. That's what they want. That's the same thing you could say about Troy Fautanu. Their offensive line, like we talked about, is set. That's what they want, built from the trenches. That's why Andy Weidel was brought in. That's why Arthur Smith was brought in. So they achieved their goal. They got guys that they want. They're going to run the ball first. And now you got to get playmakers out there that Russell Wilson or Justin Fields can get the ball to. Susie, the Steelers are about 10 picks away. A lot of good players still left on the board. What do you predict here? I think they got to go. I think they're going to go defense. You have to go defense. Cornerback. Maybe, I know they really like Peyton Wilson from NC State. Maybe if he slips, he could be the guy, or potentially a cornerback.
I'm thinking that they go cornerback as well. I don't think that they need to really bolster up their offensive line anymore. And then they just got their wide receiver of the night. So if they're going to go next pick, I'm thinking cornerback, but you never know because you don't know who's going to get picked before their next pick as well.
Yeah, cornerback, defensive back. But I'm telling you, I know they really like Peyton Wilson, the linebacker out of NC State. So if he's still on the board in 10 picks, I would not be surprised if it's Peyton Wilson. All right, let's get out to the phone lines. We got Keith out in New Kensington. How you doing, Keith?
Hey, thanks for taking my call, Richie and Sue. Listen, I wanted to get your guys' feedback on the draft with the tight ends.
Yeah.
The Steelers can consider solid with them. Are they really looking at it? Because I know that the way the NFL is with the talent, as far as people like Kelsey and some of the other big tight ends that really do phenomenal jobs, I was wondering what your take is on that. I'll hang up and listen.
Yo, Keith, there's no doubt this offense is going to be predicated on tight end play. And they got Pat Freiermuth, who they have not extended yet. So there's a guy that's kind of built from his mold up at Penn State, Theo Johnson, who you could probably get late. Jatavian Sanders is probably the best tight end on the board right now. I know they like Cade Stover, who isn't as athletic as some of these other guys. But you have Darnell Washington, you have Pat Freiermuth this year, and you have Connor Hayward. So you have 3 guys. I think tight ends lower on the list for these guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if they address that position later in this draft.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a later in the draft type of thing. I don't think it's going to be their next pick. Like we mentioned, Richie, I think, it's going to be kind of a defensive-minded pick whenever it comes to their next pick in a couple of rounds. So I don't know if tight end is next on the list, but it might be later on.
Yeah, I think Mel Kiper has best available right now, TJ Tampa out of Iowa State. That's a guy that I don't believe that they even talked to, but who knows? At this point, if you get guys that fall down, they potentially would take them. But I think the Steelers are in a good position, especially because they're attacking the offensive side of the ball right now. Defensively, they're solid. You signed Patrick Queen in the offseason. He's in the middle. You still have, a good linebacking core, great outside linebackers. Defensively up front, you're solid. I mean, I'd imagine that they're going to draft a defensive tackle at some point. Corner is their one weakness. And that's why I think they got to get another cornerback. We don't know about Corey Trice if he's going to be healthy. Donta Jackson, I'm sure he's going to slide into that starting role, but you need a slot guy too.
You mentioned how they're really offensive-minded right now in this draft, and that's the thing. If you look at these first 2 picks for the Steelers right now, they're really beefing up that offensive line. Again, that's going to be to protect either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, whoever is out there. And that was their biggest mindset going into this draft, and they got 2 really solid picks. Then they go with a wide receiver. I don't know if they continue to go offensive. However, like we've said, I think defensive-minded.
Absolutely no quarterback. I know Omar said they're not taking a quarterback early, but I would not be surprised, Susie, if they take a quarterback late. A guy like Jordan Travis, I think, would fit, a project guy that has some time if it doesn't work out with Wilson or Fields. So, I mean, maybe a Michael Pratt. These guys would be like Michael Pratt, maybe you could get in the 4th round. I don't know. But I would look at one of those 2 picks in the 6th round for a quarterback, I think. Is there anyone that intrigues you right now?
I'm not really sure. I haven't really looked at the quarterback options just because Russell Wilson and Justin Fields coming into this draft. I feel like that's what I have on my mind, and I know that this next year they already have that position locked up. So I'm not sure if that's something that the Steelers are going to be like, we need an immediate need there, especially whenever you have a seasoned veteran like Russell Wilson who's going to have to be in that starting position unless Justin Fields continues to impress in these early practices with the team.
You know, watching yesterday's 1st round, I was glued. I was down there, and I could not believe. I was told that the Steelers felt that 6 quarterbacks were going to go before them and things were going to fall their way, and that's exactly what happened. But I couldn't believe that 6 quarterbacks went off the board that early, especially this group of quarterbacks. It's not like we're talking about that 1983 draft.
But why do you say that? Why are you so surprised that 6 quarterbacks went so early?
Well, I think some of those are 2nd-round draft picks. You know, J.J. McCarthy going so early, Michael Penix going, I think that threw everything off. Michael Penix going to the Falcons after they spent $100 million on Kirk Cousins. I just think that was idiotic. You know, and Bo Nix, who I don't think anyone had him as a 1st-rounder. Not that we're all experts, but I think a lot of these teams are reaching for quarterbacks.
Whenever I was reading up on the draft, you know, I'm primarily looking at what the Steelers are going to go for and what their needs are. And it is funny that you do bring up that 6 quarterbacks go in the 1st round, because as I'm reading up on the Steelers' needs in their offensive line, that was what it seemed like everybody else was going for as well. You know, they're concerned about who the Bengals are going to pick before them, 2 picks before them and whatnot. So now that you mentioned the 6 quarterbacks going in the 1st round, yeah, it is kind of shocking whenever I was looking at all the research beforehand. However, I don't know. I mean, drafts can go any type of way, Richie.
Yeah, why I bring it up is because it allowed someone like Troy Fautanu to drop to them, because, you know, these are, you know, a couple of those quarterbacks were projected to go after the Steelers, and if that was the case, Troy Fautanu would have been drafted by someone much higher. You know, and I know another guy that they really like was Amarius Mims, the tackle out of Georgia, and he went a couple picks before with the Bengals. But, you know, I kind of felt when it was getting closer to the Steelers, it was going to be Fautanu, Barton, and there were some talks that I was hearing that they really liked Cooper DeJean, the cornerback out of Iowa, that might have been a pick too. But I think Fautanu, you don't get a guy like this at 20 too often, and I think it was a home run. And look, I think what Omar Khan is doing, Susie, is exciting. I mean, they're bringing some excitement back because they're doing things that you don't expect. Like last year, moving up to go get Broderick Jones. Now Fautanu is the guy. I mean, with Kevin Colbert, you knew what they were going to do. With Omar Khan, you don't know.
Yeah, and I mentioned it earlier. I mean, these picks, they're not going to be those people that completely stand out. I mean, you talk about 6 quarterbacks going in the 1st round. You know, whenever I do think of NFL drafts, you're always hearing the names of quarterbacks because those are the leaders on your team. But then you look at the Steelers last year and you realize how important a really good offensive line really is. And these 2 first picks that they have in Fautanu and Frazier, they're going to be extremely important. Again, they're not the flashiest of picks. However, they are those gritty, hard-nosed players that the Steelers live by, and that's the Steelers' way. And they got 2 of those in their first 2 picks.
Yeah, Pitt also had a guy get drafted in the 3rd round, Matt Gonsalves, a tackle. That was higher than I thought he would go. I figured he would be like a 4th rounder. So you see some teams reaching in different positions, but I don't think, there's one thing I don't think right now, I don't think the Steelers reached at all. I think they got 2 first rounders and they got a 2nd rounder in the 3rd round.
Yeah, like we've said all night, I think that they've done a really great job at going into this draft and getting what they needed with those first 2 picks. It's about beefing up that offensive line, making them tough, making them strong, because that is going to be what opens up plays for the quarterback position here in Pittsburgh.
All right, we got to take a break. Taking your phone calls coming up next, 412-575-2600. Hotline is open. Give us a call. Back in a couple minutes.